All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in again to the Geek Garage podcast. My name is David Dassall, your host, and with me once again is Jared Rigsby. Hey, Jared.
Hey, everybody.
How are you?
I'm great,
Good.
as always.
Excellent. Well, hopefully by now you have had a chance to listen to the part one of The Sequel Was Better. If you have not, I'm not exactly sure why you clicked on part two before
go
you
see
listen.
part one. Yeah, go
before
check
you
it
listen to part one, maybe it was a mistake, a slip of the finger. But I would highly suggest pausing it right here and then going to listen to part one first. It honestly doesn't matter.
Pause. And welcome back.
Right. I guess we really don't have to do a whole lot of previously on Lost.
Previously.
We just in part one we mainly covered sci-fi and horror and stuff like that. All instances where it was, most were objective, like The Sequel Was Better, and then we covered a couple like Blade Runner and Mad Max and stuff like that, where we felt like it was a little bit more subjective. Jared had I thought what was it, Blade Runner? You thought the original was a little bit better?
Yeah. But still thoroughly enjored the sequel.
Yes.
But,
but with this, with part two, we are actually going into, we're going to start with a slew of comic book movies.
Yes.
And then we will wrap it up with some more like action fantasy type stuff.
Yeah.
This part two is going to be a lot of fun because I actually have a lot more to say about the movies that we have on the list for part two. I think pretty much all the ones on this list I have seen multiple, if not thousands of times.
Yeah, 20 plus years of like solid comic book based movies.
Yeah.
More than that, even the Batman. You can go into Batman from the 90s. And
the Tim Burton Batman.
Tim Burton Batman. How about the...
Good old Tim Burton Batman. It's,
I think they even made a Nick Fury movie back in the 90s.
Did they?
What's his name from Baywatch? David Hasselhoff. With Hasselhoff as Nick Fury.
Yeah, because originally Nick Fury was white, right?
Yeah,
in the comic books?
Yeah. And a Punisher movie with Dolph Lundgren.
Yeah, I did not see that one. The only Punisher movie, aside from the Netflix series that I've seen, is the one that they made in I think it was the mid-2000s.
Yeah.
I forget that actor's name, but that's really the only Punisher type thing that I've seen.
Yeah. It was all right.
Yeah, it wasn't anything fantastic.
Yeah.
What we are here to talk about today is fantastic things.
Fantastic.
Yes, nothing bad, mostly good. We'll just go ahead and get started. Do you want to introduce our first film for part two?
Well, our first film for part two, I think, is widely agreed. This is kind of to ease you in here. Captain America, Winter Soldier.
The Winter Soldier.
The Winter Soldier.
Yes.
So much better than the first one.
Yeah, this definitely falls in the objective category when it comes to sequels that were better than the original.
Yeah.
We aren't. At least I'm not saying that the original was bad in any sense. I thought it was a good movie.
Yeah.
But in comparison to the Winter Soldier, it doesn't hold a candle.
Yeah, I feel like Winter Soldier, Marvel overall, Winter Soldier is one of the top Marvel in this whole this MCU.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of what we're pulling from. Of course, we'll pull from earlier than this current MCU universe. But as far as like top movies on most people's list, Winter Soldier really is really solidified in there.
Yeah, for sure. It was I believe it was the first Russo brothers movie in the MCU universe. That was kind of redundant. Anyways, it was their first take in filmmaking when it came to the MCU, and this kind of I feel like it was a good way to set the tone for from everything from this movie to Infinity War, because I feel like everything in between there was was pretty consistent as far as the themes and the overall feel.
You had like a consistent feel of the first Iron Man movie, I think, leading up to this. All the Marvel universes, they really wanted to make sure they solidified this as a movie universe. Yeah. And I totally get why they did that, especially, at first, because it's really kind of unprecedented what what Marvel's accomplished in the past, decade. So I think it's been a really interesting journey seeing their creative changes and how many different creative changes they've made that have worked, that have panned out.
Oh, for sure.
And this is like a first instance of that being like an espionage, like a spy thriller. You take Captain America. You've already done his like Tony Stark style, like, oh, here I am, introduction. I saved the world. There's an Infinity Stone.
Yep.
And then, here we are. But you get to Winter Soldier, and you're like, oh, wait, this whole secret agency, S.H.I.E.L.D. is like, there's something kind of askew about it. And you have, Hydra as a secret agency. Yeah. So you have these agency battles within, and like these, these twists and turns. And then on top of that, the expanded action scenes, which I think we've talked about
for sure,
previous podcasts. But
one of the reasons, and you kind of touched a little bit on this, but in my opinion, one of the reasons why the Winter Soldier ended up being so great was that up until this point, for the most part, all the movies in the MCU that weren't Avengers, all the superhero solo outings, your Iron Man, your Incredible Hulk, which is kind of sort of not really relative to everything else. I mean, it's in the
Tony
MCU,
Stark was in it,
Yeah,
it kind of jump started it, right? I think that was the second movie that was kind of like, oh, they're making a universe,
right?
Oh man,
yeah. But everything kind of leading up to this moment was very contained. It was very small scale. They didn't have to worry about the things that they have to worry about now, which is like, they have so many superheroes now, so many Avengers, that like, how do we answer the question of, when we have a solo movie, why can't all the other Avengers come in and help? Like, where were they when when all this shit was going down? And that's one of the harder things to answer. And this movie actually had the guts to pull something off as large as, this whole big fucking thing called S.H.I.E.L.D. It's basically all a lie, and it's been run by this crazy evil regime for the last 1,000 years.
S.H.I.E.L.D. has been run by Hydra for a while.
Yeah, and just to have it all. It was just such a large scale plot line to it that there's just so much going on.
Yeah.
And the idea was so big that and the fact that they were able to pull it off and not have to worry about like introducing a whole lot of other of the superheroes or Avengers into this movie for it to make sense, was really a feat that was fantastic.
Yeah, and it was one of those that like, as a fan of comics, I was never that into Captain America. He always kind of seemed generic to me. It's like, oh, he's a super soldier, so he's strong and he's fast and he's got that cool shield.
Right.
But I think Winter Soldier was the movie that made me like change kind of my opinion on Captain America. I'm like, oh, cool. He's like, he can do like Black Ops type stuff, which he does, in the opening.
Yeah.
And I think that really sets the tone for the movie overall. Yeah. Is him, infiltrating this ship of like these pirates and like, the martial arts, man, having George St. Pierre actually play a villain, who's like, if you're not familiar with UFC or MMA, he's like a champ, like I forgot what weight class he's up there in the weight class, but
he's a pretty big dude,
incredible fighter. Has a lot of really good like striking, like karate and that type of martial art, as which looks good on camera.
Yeah.
He didn't do as much of his wrestling and groundwork, obviously, for Captain America, but he made like a good first like mini boss for Cap to like go up against and do like this really cool spin kick.
Yeah.
But they really upped the ante on their martial arts choreography, which really sold me on the character and how like badass the character is. Especially his fight scenes with the Winter Soldier. Yeah. Which, man, that was amazing. That knife fight.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah. They're really just throwing down. It comes down after this big action sequence, this big chase scene, and then it's just like them kind of going at it like, mano a mano. That was a really cool element.
Yeah, it was kind of you touched on this a little bit, but it was a lot of fun to watch Cap kind of this was his first chance, or our first look at him adapting to being in today's world, coming out of frozen carbonite,
right,
and just being not in the 1940s anymore, or whatever, and trying to come to terms and grips with so much, with being dead for 60 or 70 years or however long it was, and living in this time where he has that famous line in it was either Avengers or maybe this one, where he says like, when I woke up they told us that we won the war, but they didn't tell us what we lost, or tell me what we lost. And that's a line that kind of resonates, especially through this movie, is that he's just kind of figuring out how to be in this world. There's the Avengers, the first Avengers, that was in between his movie, the original Captain America, and then this. So you have him operating in today's modern society in the Avengers, but you really don't get a look at him
like dealing with that.
Like character. A close look under a magnifying glass of him figuring out how to operate, and just him kind of the whole thing with what they're doing with SHIELD, and what Nick Fury is overseeing with the helicarriers, and it really gives you an idea as how true north Captain America's moral compass is. Like, it's really, it comes down to like, would Captain America agree with your choices? And if not, they're probably bad choices.
He's like, wait, it's kind of like it's his turn. I talked about this with like the original Star Wars trilogy being like one like fluid like story arc, and this is kind of like the Captain America version of Empire Strikes Back, where like his ideas of who he is and what he believes in get totally challenged in this one. So he starts off as super patriotic. The government is fighting the good fight, the World War II era,
right?
And then you kind of move into like this modern era of governments and like espionage and this whole world of like
many secrets,
how global politics have transformed,
right?
And how governments actually operate. And he's like disenfranchised by it. So he starts his journey that brings to Civil War, and that leads on into Infinity War, where he's like this rogue character. He's like, I've gone from this poster child for American patriotism to being hunted as essentially a terrorist,
right?
In the span of all of these movies.
And I
think Winter Soldier was a pivotal point in that whole journey. They kind of set it up with the first Avengers, where he realizes that SHIELD has been making weapons out of these like I think they made guns out of the Destroyer from Thor.
Okay.
Like the technology, the big mech suit, not mech suit, but like with the face cannon,
okay.
like the Destroyer. Okay. They make guns out of that, and he's like, you're supposed to destroy this kind of stuff. This is
Right.
like really dangerous.
Yeah.
And Nick Fury's all like, well, we have to fight fire with fire when these threats come and blah, blah, blah. And
Right.
so there's this real challenging moment in the first Avengers movie that gets paid off big in Winter Soldier and really tweaks when it's like essentially they send his best friend after him, and that's the Winter Soldier. And then so as far as character arcs go, it had all of the right points hitting, and then the action was just blew me away.
Right.
Like it was amazing fight scenes, amazing action scenes.
Yeah.
And like a thrilling storyline.
Yeah, and the introduction to Falcon, Anthony Mackie's character, and he's been a true delight to have since then.
Falcon's cool.
It's him and Hawkeye. I feel like are the most self-aware characters in the MCU.
Right.
That there's that scene in Age of Ultron where Hawkeye, he's like, look, everyone's flying around. They have special powers. I have a bow and arrow, and I'm really good at shooting it.
None of us really knows what we're doing here.
There's no reason that it makes sense for me to be here, but I'm on the team. And I'm here, so there's I have to go out there and do my job. Are you gonna do yours? I feel like Anthony Mackie, he kind of answers that same question, but with his own flair. Like, I just do what he does, just slower.
Yeah. He's a good best friend character.
Yeah.
And I think as far as
for sure.
grounding Captain America, especially in Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
When his whole world's falling apart, everything he thinks he believes in, he knows he's got friends that he can trust.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big.
Yeah, it was definitely fun to see them become friends. And it makes a lot of sense for them to be friends where, they're both veterans. They both served, obviously in different time periods. So they both have to deal with, the idea of, serving in the armed forces, but just on different levels, but they both have the same ideals when it comes to what needs to be done at the end of the day. So I think that's part of what makes that relationship work, and that relationship along with Cap's relationship with Nat really was a lot of fun to watch in that movie too. So I think it was just a combination of so many factors that made that movie. Sorry if you hear my kid in the background. We're currently recording in my kitchen, and he just woke up from his nap, so he's banging on shit. This is another one of those movies where we could just talk about all day, but we don't want to because we have several other movies to get to. I guess we'll, unless you have any other thoughts, we'll move on to the next one.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Cool. The next one we have on our list is Thor Ragnarok. I guess it makes sense to segue from Winter Soldier to this, staying in the MCU. There's plenty of other MCU movies where the sequel, was a step up in some form or fashion from the original, but Ragnarok, it's one of those instances that I stated in part one where sometimes there's the original which comes out with that's pretty good, and then there might have been a sophomore slump. It's kind of overall viewed Thor to the Dark World as it not being as great as it could have been. I really liked it. I like all the Thor movies. But
I enjoyed it too.
But talking with a lot of people and prep for this episode, a lot of people did seem to have some problems with it. I understand that Malekith wasn't the strongest villain, which could have had something to do with it. But this is one of those examples where the third one in the franchise really helps things come full circle. A lot of that is in credit to Taika Waititi's direction in this film, his fresh look at things. it's a great combination of Thor's old persona of, that doth Tao, that form of speaking.
That Shakespearean kind of.
Yeah, the
Thor.
Shakespearean, old Norse god way of speaking, combined with his like knowledge of Earth, and the way that they speak on Earth. So it was very funny to and fun to watch him kind of have those two different characteristics about him.
Yeah, I give a ton of credit to James Gunn and the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise for opening the pathway for Thor to go in this direction.
Yeah,
because it's like what James Gunn wanted to do with that series with Guardians of the Galaxy is very much inspired by old space opera type things like Flash Gordon, stuff like that, and that it's kind of like it's cheesy but in a good way, but it's also like they have so much good like tech, like computer generated graphics that can make these like spacescapes like work out, but also give that retro flair. And they pulled a lot from that for Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah, for sure.
On top of that, and that ridiculousness that they weren't sure was really going to pan out, I think in the first two, I don't think they really knew how audiences would digest this Thor world.
Right, yeah.
He's like a Norse god, but he's also like this outer space type dude.
Yeah, and if you look at like the original Thor graphic novels and comic books, you're like how is that going to translate and fall in line with all these other like worldly characters that that live on Earth, and now you're introducing someone from outer space, or from another dimension, or another
completely
planet. Like how are you going to introduce that? And there was so much up in the air. Like, is this going to fall flat with our audiences? Are they going to embrace it? And I think for the most part, fans of comic books and the MCU so far, they embraced it for the most part.
I think they realized they would embrace it after the first Guardians of the Galaxy was huge. It was like, man, this is going to be one big ridiculous space opera movie, and it's going to have a lot of comedy in it, and we're just going to run with it. And it blew out the box office. And now they're like, okay, now we can do that with Thor. Now we have a direction, I think, with Thor Ragnarok. And they took it there from previously. It was more kind of like, okay, how are we going to fit this Thor guy into this Iron Man universe we've started? Like the very first Thor movie was kind of around that range of like, we want him in the Iron Man world, but he's obviously a Norse god from outer space.
Right, yeah.
So I can see why they didn't really know what exactly to do with him, though I think they did a decent enough job because he was all good in Avengers. They worked with him for several movies up until Ragnarok came out, so they kind of found a place for him. But I think Ragnarok was really they just took it there.
I spoke a little bit about when we were talking about the Winter Soldier, about having to now solve the problem of we have all these superheroes in existence now. What do we do when we have the solo films and we have battles on Earth or whatever, and we're like, where are all the other Avengers? This helped having Bruce Banner / the Hulk in this movie helped solve that, and it paid off big time because he was such a great addition to this movie. You start grouping them together, right? Like dynamically they make such a good pairing together because they're other than Thor having an actual weapon, their kind of go-to method is brute force. And so they're both very much people that.
Yeah, they're two of the strongest Avengers too. So it's like
physically,
if you're gonna have like these crazy outer space battles and like these villains that are just like larger than life, you have your two like big guys together. Like Hulk versus Fenrir, I think was awesome. He just like landed. He was like, He roars and the Hulk roars and then they do their thing.
I love when he I forget what he says to Valkyrie right before he jumps out of the out of the ship, and he's like you were asking who or saying I look familiar. This is why. It's something to that effect, and he just jumps out and just hits the fucking
the bridge, whatever that substance was.
Yeah, and just boom, 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 and you're like, wow, is Bruce okay? Like, did he die?
They had that squeaky sound effect. Yeah. He landed on glass. It was
right,
like a slide or something. Yeah. That was great.
Yeah, I was glad he wasn't dead after that.
Yeah, yeah. And the Hulk had a lot more of a character. They started his character arc within these movies. So like between Thor Ragnarok, Infinity War, and Infinity War Part 2, Hulk has his whole character arc where him and Bruce Banner aren't totally jiving together.
Right.
You pick up where he's been Hulk for a really long time.
Yeah.
It almost loses his sense of identity as Bruce Banner. And then when he turns back to Bruce Banner, he doesn't want to be Hulk again until he's forced to. And then that kind of carries on into Infinity War, where Hulk is like, "No, I don't want to come back out. No, I'm good." You're like, "What? No, you have to.
Yeah,
they need you."
Yeah, for sure. All right. You want to move on to the next one?
El Darko Knighto.
Yeah, Dark Knight. This really, you're either you think this is better than the original, or you're wrong. It really is undisputed.
Standout.
Yeah. I've been looking forward to talking about this movie because it's really the only stuff, and I mean it's not part of the DCEU, but it's really one of the very few DC movies or franchises that is actually good.
Yeah.
I mean they just so much of their stuff is unfortunately being swings and misses.
Yeah.
But with this, I think when I was researching, I told you this, that some guy said, I loved The Dark Knight so much I forgot that the first one existed, which is definitely understandable, and I can see that because, it doesn't totally forget everything that happened in the original, but it's definitely a shift in, I'd say a little bit a shift in tone, but mostly it's just like another chapter in that, as opposed to relying so much on what happened in the original.
Yeah.
It's just more of like another chapter.
It's adding layers to, of course, it's Nolan, it's
right.
like, how do you compare Nolan's one movie to Nolan's other movie when he adds all these complex layers of philosophy and society and plus character development.
Plus it's just unfair to put anyone else against Chris Nolan coming to make a comic book movie.
Yeah. And that was like I was talking about in the last part one of, there's something cognitive there that's mixed with something visceral, something like exciting action scenes with something philosophical to think about.
Yeah.
Like Joker being this dual nature with Batman of not really caring about society's laws, but just acting on what they believe they want, you know, or this anarchy that the Joker brings to the table. And it's it makes Batman kind of question himself,
for sure,
and his own methods.
Yeah, there's so many different incarnations of the Joker, and I'm not just speaking there's the Joker in this movie, and then there's Jack Nicholson's Joker, and then aside from all the movie Jokers, there's all the comic book Jokers and the and all that, and you have this kind of criminal manipulator Joker that we have in The Dark Knight, and then you have Jared Leto's Joker, which is the classic mobster, crime boss type of Joker. What I like about this, it's undisputed that the fact that the Joker is a high part of what made The Dark Knight so successful
Yeah.
and such a great movie. And like you were just saying, you made a good point with he's like, he is a villain, but he speaks so much truth, like so much quote unquote evil truth
Yeah.
with what we all think as humans on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we all have to battle, we all have battles with our own demons.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's so much in life where we're like life would just be so much easier if we were just evil all the time and just acted on our terrible impulses
yeah.
to be selfish all
Yeah.
the time. And the Joker's role in this movie kind of, it shines in that aspect where
Yeah.
he's you see like how easy life could be if you just did whatever the fuck you wanted to all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah. And like comparatively to like Ra's al Ghul, like the Batman Begins, where Ra's al Ghul has this ideology that he wants to impose he wants to make the world a better place. That's kind of his driving factor. He might be misguided in that,
Right.
and like destroying all of Gotham, you know, and like just tearing it down, to which Batman is like, no, I just can't let you just destroy this entire city, even
Right.
if you think it would just wipe out, you know, crime or evil from the world.
Yeah.
Like Joker's whole society like construct is just turns that on its head. It's like, I'm this agent of chaos that's trying to prove that people have a darker, you know, people will act on their darker side, and you know, Batman's job is to kind of like wrangle things in, and like then he starts questioning himself. He was like, am I doing this right? And he's like,
Right.
do I need to keep doing this? And he starts thinking about, you know, what happens at, you know, does Harvey Dent take the reins? Like, do I give this back to society? And then all of a sudden Harvey Dent gets thrown into the anarchy. And
Right.
it's like, who do you trust? Like,
Poor Harvey Dent.
there's just so many layers of questions that the Joker just like just ignites by just pure anarchy.
Yeah.
And the fire element, they always had that element, how the intro comes in with
Yeah.
like blue fire.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
the Joker is like this agent of fire. Like everything is
Yeah.
he makes things blow up. He catches the money on fire. He scars the side of Two-Face's face, turning him into a villain.
Blows up the hospital.
Blows up the hospital, kills their girlfriend.
Yeah.
You know, I guess Batman and Harvey's shared girlfriend, or what, the love interest of both of them.
So many explosions.
So many explosions, but it's like it's a
I'm
part
a-
of this anarchy. It's like
I'm a big fan of things that are cheap, like gunpowder and gasoline.
Yeah.
I don't do a very good Joker impression, but that scene where, you know,
Yeah.
the mobsters come in and he's like standing on top of that giant fucking pile of money.
Yeah.
And he's got whatever that guy's name was at the very top.
Yeah.
And he like just jumps and slides down the pile of money.
Yeah.
And you know, he's like, you know, I'm not a sick freak. I'm just a guy like trying to
Yeah.
you know, live my life, and you know, money doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. He's like, I'm not a corrupted villain like some
Yeah.
of these other gangsters are, but I'm just, this is what happens when you don't care about anything.
Right.
Like, and you just want to watch, like Alfred says, to watch
Yeah.
the world burn. Another fire kind of element
yeah.
in there.
Yeah, there is a lot of elements of fire and explosions and destruction.
Yeah.
The whole idea of trying to tear down the old world
Yeah.
in order to make way for a new one.
Yeah.
And what it takes to do that, and if the price is worth the price of doing that, if it's worth what you're getting in return.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's, you know, it's one of those, definitely one of those movies like we talked about in part one that has so many levels, like, as you know, far as like the philosophical aspects and
Yeah.
stuff. It's just so much that you can talk about with this.
Yeah.
It's intense. And then there was that we were talking about it earlier before we started recording, the fan theory that I think it was Patton Oswalt had,
Oh, yeah.
where he thought that the Joker was like ex-military and he was like an interrogator.
Yeah.
And all his points were proven like throughout these clips that they showed. The video is out there somewhere. You
These
just
little Easter
Google
eggs.
It. Yeah. And it's just like Easter egg after Easter egg after Easter egg. You're just like, holy shit! Like this could actually be like a true fan theory.
Yeah.
Like you have the scene where he's the lights come on in the interrogation room with the Joker, and you see Batman standing right behind him.
Yeah.
And you have the Joker like, oh, you don't start with the head. You get him get the guy
all fuzzy.
all fuzzy.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of other moments where he's interacting with like the cops or whatever, and it really seems like he has experience on the other end of things, like trying to get answers out of people. And it's almost, I guess the argument that's made aside from trying to prove this point is that, he was, yes, he could have been an interrogator, but he himself was subject to the whole you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And he's almost subject to that, where he would have been an interrogator, and now he lived long enough to see himself basically become crazy with the amount, like, you have to train yourself to think like these crazy a-holes. And he had to do that so much that now he corrupted himself.
He's like has no more ideology. It's just like, not to mention his experience with like guns and explosives, especially. For sure. That takes some high level training to be that good with explosives and how he sets up those traps. And
I haven't heard a whole lot of fan theories aside from this one for this trilogy, but it's definitely one of the best fan theories of any movie franchise that I've ever heard. It's one that, it's a lot of fun to talk about, and at the end of the day, you're like, it's not confirmed, but it's so much fun to talk about because it just makes so much sense, like you said.
That's another element of this Joker that makes him so special, is he doesn't necessarily have a backstory. That's all just like,
you're just thrown into it,
and that's like a fear element, which is it's a big part of all of these Chris Nolan Batman movies. The first one had Scarecrow with the fear toxin. Batman notoriously does the bat thing to scare villains. He uses fear as a weapon, so fear is like this big element of Batman. And then Joker, like the whole fact that A, he's a clown, and clowns have that fear element to them, and B, that he you don't know where he comes from. He's like, his level of insanity makes him very mysterious. And like, he has these moments where he's like look at me, and he's like, all of a sudden he's like, and then he just turns and there's like something dark inside. You're like, oh man, like he shows you his true darkness there for a second, and you're like, oh, that's unnerving. It's creepy. So he had this really great element of mystery and fear that I think made him such a great villain, because you're scared of him to some degree.
Absolutely.
He like brings that out.
We're gonna have to cut this one off because we're getting into territory
let's
of
talk about the social implications of the Dark Knight.
No, well, I think we've hit a bunch of good points with this one, so I'd say it's fair to move on to the next one, and we'll. It's kind of back with Marvel, but outside of the MCU, we're going to talk about Spider-Man 2, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man.
Bringing back our old buddy Sam Raimi.
Sam Raimi.
From Evil Dead.
I was a pretty big fan of this original Spider-Man outing. I even like Spider-Man 3. All the things that everyone has a problem with. Like, now I'm like, I can see why that's a poor choice or kind of silly to include in the movie. But at the time when I saw it, I still had a good time watching it. But yeah, I do feel like Spider-Man 2 is the strongest out of the three, because we were talking about this earlier. I think it was before we started recording, but one of the things when it comes to superhero movies, especially when the sequel is better, is the origin story is out of the way. And this is a clear case of that. Is they had to spend I don't know, it was maybe 30-45 minutes from the first Spider-Man, kind of going through his origin story. So
the spider had to bite him.
Right.
He had to notice the powers were starting to
Uncle
happen.
Ben had to die.
Ben had to die.
All that shit. And in this one, in the second one, all that stuff was out of the way. They can go right into his relationship with Doc Ock, and how
life as Spider-Man.
Do what?
Life as Spider-Man.
Yeah.
He's like, well, I'm just doing my Spider-Man work.
Right.
On the side.
Yeah, and then there was the whole thing. Was it in Spider-Man 2 when he ditches his suit for a little while and doesn't do Spider-Man, or was that 3 where he decides to? I think it was 2 when he stops being Spider-Man for 10 or 20 minutes.
Yeah. He's like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah. But yeah, I think a lot of what made this movie great, just like The Dark Knight, was the villain, and how the whole idea of the villain actually kind of has some good points.
He's a strong multifaceted villain. Like back to the new Marvel MCU,
right.
We've seen a lot of those lately. And people react so well to them because it's not like this good versus evil kind of construct. You have more complexity to your characters, and you can flesh them out, and they're more interesting. So the drama between them is more interesting. Which is what I think they dropped the ball on number 3. For me, my opinion on that, it's mainly Venom, right? Mm-hmm. So Venom is Spider-Man's probably biggest nemesis and the most popular nemesis. Mm-hmm. And you make him kind of scrawny and he wasn't that
and
one.
For Grace.
And you're like, oh no. I'm leaving. No. And they kind of crammed him in there because they had the Sandman villain, which is interesting.
that was the crux of that movie, was trying to fit 15 villains in one movie, where Spider-Man is the only protagonist.
And it kind of goes back to why Marvel is doing so much better than DC universe. Mm-hmm. Is DC I feel like tried to jump to groupings of these heroes. They try to jump to Suicide Squad, Justice League. They try to do these multiple heroes all in the same, and you don't have enough time to flesh out each of them.
For sure.
As where Marvel, they had the Avengers, but they fleshed out Iron Man, Hulk, Captain America, Thor. They all had their own entire movies to flesh them out before they came together, and then you could kind of understand them as a team better. You don't have to introduce all of them at the same time.
For sure.
Origin story. Something happens.
Right.
Yeah, ta-da! Flashy explosions.
Yeah.
There's more character development there. And I went on that rant. I forgot what my original point was, but doesn't matter. No. Oh, that's why Spider-Man 3 didn't work so much. The original 3.
Right.
They kind of crammed one of the biggest villains in the Spider-Man universe into kind of a subplot.
Or an afterthought. They definitely didn't give Venom his due in that movie. They should have just left him out.
That's what I think. They were.
Yeah, it really didn't make sense.
Or make him the only villain. The whole plot around the symbiote.
I guess you could have ditched Sandman, and they might have been able to get away with having Venom and was it Hobgoblin?
Yeah. James Franco.
Yeah, James Franco.
Our boy James.
Yeah. Yeah, he had an interesting story arc in that trilogy.
Yeah.
Just seeing him in the first one versus like the third one.
Yeah.
Like just this stark contrast. And
Yeah,
his
it was
character.
a little weird. Him as do you really like recall him as Hobgoblin? He was.
I mean, like it's been a while since I've seen those movies. I need to go back and visit them.
Yeah.
But
It's like I have a clear image in my head of what Green Goblin looked like, what Dr. Octopus looked like, but then like I feel like since they kind of crammed Hobgoblin in there, he just looks like James Franco on a hoverboard. Really, that's really all I can say for him. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, there he is. You know,
yeah, for sure. I guess we've touched quite a bit on Spider-Man 2 or enough, so we can push forward. Let's see. I think that pretty much does it for superhero movies. I mean,
let's get a little fantasy action going.
Yeah,
on
there's plenty of other superhero movies that where the sequel was a little bit better than the original. Yeah. But our other choices in these episodes, we're gonna, for the sake of brevity,
just not as thrilling.
Yeah, for sure.
You're like,
yeah. Let's kick it into some fantasy and then some action. We got up next the Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban.
Oh yeah.
So I actually do not have a favorite, I don't think, of the Harry Potter film franchise. I definitely have a favorite book.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I have a favorite film. I do. I wrote a blog post a couple months ago.
Yeah.
About the best Harry Potter movie.
Yeah.
And it was kind of fun to write because I was like, I kind of went through all these points and I was like, yeah, it's really hard to pick one, and it's all subjective. And at the end, I was like, gotcha! It was the Order of the Phoenix the whole time.
The whole time. This was the mean teacher, right?
Yeah.
I'm not as familiar with the Harry Potter verse.
Yeah.
As it probably should be.
Yeah. It's all right. I'm a huge Harry Potter nerd, and I grew up reading the books. Which is kind of weird. Like my I mean, I didn't grow up in like a strict Catholic household, but my dad, like, we went to church every Sunday, and we followed the Catholic teachings pretty closely. And with a lot of those families in the late 90s and 2000s where Harry Potter and similar stuff was coming out, a lot of families didn't allow their kids to either watch the movies or read the books. And I was a little surprised that my dad let me read them. Yeah. But at the same time, it's like, whatever. Like, I mean, I was kind of getting to I was about to be in high school when the books started coming out. So I was kind of at that age. Yeah. Anyways, so the reason why I think I found Prisoner of Azkaban on a couple of lists when doing research as far as being the best or like quote unquote the sequel as being better. Of course, it's one of those instances where it's not necessarily the sequel. It's, kind of a few films in where it finally hits its stride. And that's definitely the case with this. Yeah. You have the first two, which were directed by Chris Columbus. And, his thing is,
really?
He did like Home Alone.
Chris Columbus?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I'll do like Christopher Columbus.
Yeah, like the guy that discovered the United States.
Yeah, quote unquote discovered.
Right, yeah. Chris Columbus, he directed like Home Alone, and didn't he do The Goonies? And
I'm actually not. I know the name. I'm not super familiar with his work.
He was big in like the late 80s, mid to late 80s and 90s and stuff, in directing stuff. But his thing was all like, lovey-dovey family film type stuff where, the good guy always wins. Right. So, and the first two books already kind of have that feel to it where it's, they're not too dark. They're pretty, easygoing and fun. and so it was Chris Columbus was very well suited to direct those first two movies.
Yeah.
But with the third one, it kind of starts to take a dark turn where there's some time travel involved, and you know, people or things start dying, and you're introduced to more characters in the universe. You know, you're introduced to Sirius Black. You
know, I think that's just as a side note. I think that's a really fascinating aspect of Harry Potter that most people don't think about are the dark kind of edges to it. It's definitely a children's book. It's for children, but there's like enough of a darkness to it that really is captivating with the whole fantasy element. Because of course there's going to be dark parts to like a fantasy. You know, you have like a world where monsters and witches and stuff like that exist. Yeah. Of course there's going to be some scary stuff. And then that little splash of scary, I think, really brings even like kids in. Like, oh man.
Yeah, for sure.
Like
it's almost like a little mini good introductory for them to like the horror and sci-fi genre.
Yeah.
Instead of like just throwing them in and letting them watch like hard rated R movies.
Yeah. Well, it's like the old like grim fairy tales always had this element of horror to them that are like,
and then
know,
they
kids,
were like
kids
whitewashed and bleached by Disney.
Yeah.
To where, you know, the good people win instead of you know, like
a lot of songs, you know. But even in Disney movies, they were kind of spookier before. You know, the older Disney movies had spookier elements
for sure. I mean, overall, I mean, we don't have to spend a whole lot of time on this one, but I wanted to talk about it a little bit because I felt like it was the first turn in the franchise where you kind of saw what was to come, because it was like there was a Dark Lord and he might return, and and you're like, now we have to actually think about you know, the possibility of the reality of that, you know, becoming a thing. And I thought that it was handled really well, thanks to Alfonso Cuarón from I think he did Gravity, the Sandra Bullock movie. I wasn't a huge fan, but he's done a few other things that were really good. But Prisoner of Azkaban, it's definitely not my favorite movie. Like I said, I don't even know if I have a favorite. If I had to name one, it might be Order of the Phoenix, or it might be Half-Blood Prince. Since the Half-Blood Prince,
I really
was my
like those first three that were kind of like they're almost episodic. They had a connecting storyline, but they would have their own little adventures and mysteries, and then
everything else was pretty closely tied together, like one long continuous story. Which was cool in its own right, but like you were saying, it was those first few books before the introduction of Tom Riddle and Voldemort.
And then it really kind of took off into that storyline. Like, oh, he's coming. He's still coming.
Right. So like I said, I just want to spend a little time on that. You want to introduce our next movie?
Oh, yeah. Good old Lord of the Rings.
Loader, man. Loader. L-O-T-R.
Loader. I think
Two Towers.
We really wanted to touch on a couple of things with Lord of the Rings. First of all, the Two Towers, this might be one of those that's like a split, you know, as far as what most people will think. I think a lot of people got bored of the action. Like, Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers definitely had...
Those people are stupid.
Much more action, right? And to me, that was an element that, for me, made it a better movie. And I'll touch on the differences between the source material, because I'm also a fan of the source material and recognize that it's very different from the movie.
This is an appropriate movie for you to talk about, because unlike me, I haven't read any of the books. So it's appropriate for you to kind of take the lead on this one.
The books have a lot more to do with the characters. It covers war, and it covers the effects of war, and it has kind of like, it has like a deeper has a lot of deeper meanings.
Right.
Tolkien was really talking about society at the time. He fought in World War One. He actually hated war, but also recognized a need for it at times, and that's kind of what Lord of the Rings really covered. A lot of people got the idea since the movies came out that Tolkien was actually a very like super pro-war. And that's not necessarily the case, even though he believes in a just, like the possibility of a just war, like a good versus evil type scenario. He, like his books have a lot more that are kind of like the after effects of war, like, the Uruk-hai, the goblins are definitely like monsters. So, you view them as the other. But anyways, that can go into like a deep rabbit hole, to where the Two Towers in the movie was about half war, like like mostly them battling. And, I can see why they did that, as far as the movie franchise goes, because you have an audience that wants to see action happening.
Right.
And then in the Fellowship, you had this build up of like, oh man, this big army is coming, and we're all in a lot of trouble because this Dark Lord has this dark army. And now you have part 2, and you're like, well, we actually have to show some of these some of these battle scenes that Tolkien essentially skipped over. He's like, it happened, and then like you're in the aftermath type thing. And of course, it makes for better viewing, because you're like, oh man, they're fighting monsters, and you have essentially a movie of them fighting an army of monsters. But like I said before, some people even got like bored. They're like, okay, I'm just watching Viggo Mortensen swing his sword around and just cut down dudes left and right.
Yeah, the whole build up to the battle at Helm's Deep and the actual battle at Helm's Deep was pretty crazy intense.
Yeah.
And it wasn't short lived.
Yeah.
Like the battle was pretty intricate and pretty long.
Yeah, and those orcs were scary, and it's another one of those visceral moments that it's entertaining, because you have these, like, first of all, I really appreciated the use of prosthetics, where they could have just skipped and used CGI for all this army of orcs.
I'm
and
a
I
huge
think that
fan of practical effects and costumes and makeup versus CG.
Yeah, so on a big level, I was appreciative of that.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not even like, I hate to even use it as like an intellectual like discussion of like, oh, of course, Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers was a pivotal movement in cinema. It was an action movie, but I just love dumb action sometimes.
Yeah,
and that's what.
No, it's great.
And it hit those points.
And like the banter between Gimli and Legolas.
Yeah.
Thanks, honey. My wife is walking around, and she just needs to like stand here, and when I blank on character names, she yells them out to me.
Pass you a note.
I mean, she could be on all my episodes, but she. So I don't want to, say undersell her geekiness, because sometimes she one ups me in the geeky department. Yeah. But yeah. Anyways, Two Towers, fantastic. I'm a huge fan of the Fellowship.
Same here.
A lot of people find that as like one of the weakest films, but I really like it because it's like it has like the really happy like opening and beginning where you see Gandalf like coming into the Shire, and him meeting up with Frodo and Bilbo again, and everything's happy for a little while. But you kind of
having that little pan flute in the background, so it's happy. It's happy time.
Right. The score to that movie is fantastic. It's very very good, noteworthy. I really don't. What has Peter Jackson done since then that's been notable? Has he done anything after
I believe
Lord of the Rings that was like?
He's done something. He's got something coming out, I think. Of course he did The Hobbit.
Hobbit. That's right. I'm sorry. Yeah.
which is all right, I guess.
Yeah, it was fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that they really needed to break it into 3 movies. I mean, of course, you know, it makes sense if you want to make a lot of money.
Right. Yeah.
But
in the same way, those were like just they're action movies, you know.
Yeah.
They were like fantasy action. It was fun for that reason.
yeah,
but
I mean, it was a lot of.
it's hard to compare to the source material.
Yeah, it was cool to have them basically give Smaug his own movie.
Yeah.
Like he had like a big part in the second one.
Yeah, and the original Hobbit book is really like, honestly, you would make a better like TV series than like a movie series.
I mean, wasn't
'Cause
that
it was much more
originally-
episodic?
Wasn't that originally what it was? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
other than the book, it was like a made for TV movie?
Well,
or
it
a
was
series
it
or
was
something?
a serial. So he wrote for I believe it was like a magazine, some kind of publication where he wrote like pieces of the adventure, kind of like a weekly basis, and then he kind of found like a nice end point for it and just like slapped it all together
Okay.
as The Hobbit. And then he went into like Lord of the Rings and all of that, you know, really expanded. All because he's a linguist.
Yeah.
Like, this is where a lot of this stuff comes from, all these weird names. He just, half of the thing he loved to do is just make up, like, the Elvish language and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And that's what he did, and he made a world out of it.
Yeah. On a similar note, since we just discussed a little bit of Harry Potter, I didn't realize how much of the, especially mainly the character names, but a lot of the other lore and stuff in there too, was heavily influenced by astrology and astronomy. We went to one of the way late play dates at the Adventure Science Center, and it was Harry Potter themed, and Lindsay's furiously writing something. I don't understand why she can't just tell me.
Oh, yeah.
The Hobbit was can't to be a children's story. Meant. Oh. Okay.
Yeah. Much more for children.
Yeah. Yeah. That.
The movie's not so much, no.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit more violent.
Yeah.
And scary.
More violent, yeah.
But yeah, I don't. Do you have any other thoughts on the Two Towers that you'd like to discuss before we move on?
Honestly, not super. I just I thought it'd be a fun addition.
Okay.
Just because it is an action movie.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's what and you know what? Sometimes I just like watching dudes kill monsters with swords. You know?
Right.
That's what it was all about.
Yeah. Speaking of action, we really only have like one or two. There are quite a few action movies where the sequel or one down the line, other than the original, was better. But I only wrote down one, and it is Skyfall from the Daniel Craig outing of James Bond.
Yeah.
I know this is probably blasphemy, but Daniel Craig's outing as James Bond is definitely my favorite.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more visceral, like a little bit more. I mean, there's a lot of hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah, I agree.
And you see a lot of flaws in him.
Yeah.
Not just in the combat, but just
His
in
character.
general. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where you can see the fact that he's just recently starting with Casino Royale. You get the feeling that he's not too fresh off the heels of becoming a double agent.
Yeah.
Because he's still getting the crap beaten out of him, and at the whole beginning chase scene of the black dude that knows all the parkour tricks.
Yeah.
We're not really here to talk about Casino Royale.
Well, they all have that vibe to them comparatively to like old James Bond, and the whole thing with James Bond is they keep refreshing him for a new era.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like you had like the '90s had the Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah,
James
he was
Bond
like
was
the
completely
schmoozy,
different.
like
yeah,
he
was
just very
schmoozy.
like he didn't really have. it wasn't necessarily like a rapey vibe even by today's standards. But he was definitely more of like the ladies' man type of James Bond.
And he had a lot of good action. Like he had that 90s action.
Yeah.
You know, which is a little bit different.
It was like that calm, cool, and collect action.
Yeah.
Where like even at his most sweaty, he still looked like
he's still in
very
a suit.
gentlemanly and dapper.
Yeah.
Like he just always exuded like this typical Pierce Brosnan like GQ appearance.
Yep.
You know, there's the scene in I think it was the third one of that franchise where it's the beginning before the intro credits. Where his little thing that it was almost like that boat / submarine, the one person submarine, goes underwater and it's about to reemerge and you see him like completely underwater and he's like straightening out his tie. Anyways, we're not really gotten kind of off base.
We're talking about Daniel Craig 3.
Yes, we're talking about Skyfall. I definitely think that this is one of those objective scenarios where, like, yes, the Casino Royale was great. I personally love Casino Royale a lot. Quantum of Solace was okay. It wasn't fantastic, but it wasn't bad.
Yeah.
But Skyfall just did so many favors to the franchise and kind of solidified it in its history of being a part of the 007 franchise.
Yeah.
As a whole, you know, and a lot of that I feel it has to do with I think it was Sam Mendes's direction and you know, the big like sweeping shots of you know, Scotland when they were shooting there, and like the whole battle scene at the end at James Bond's you know, old orphanage. Where
gotta get back to his roots.
Yeah, where he reunites with him and M. They come and they reunite with you know, I don't know. He wasn't the groundskeeper. He might have been the operator of the the orphanage,
like an old mentor.
Yeah, but
character.
He apparently he still resides there or something, or still is kind of like a groundskeeper or whatever. So there was all that, and then plus Javier Bardem's part as a villain is just so damn creepy.
Yeah,
like he's so weird, and like there's, I don't know if it was confirmed or not. It was more of a fan theory that he was like super gay.
Yeah,
because you know, there was that part where, you know, you're first introduced to him, and he has that big scene where it's a little Tarantino-esque where, you know, it's a static shot and you just kind of watch action happen.
Yeah.
But, you know, he's kind of coming down off of an elevator, I think, or stairs, and he's just slowly walking up to where James Bond has been like captured, and he's kind of like strapped to a chair, and he starts like rubbing his leg, like in this weird seductive manner, and I'm like, all right, guy, what? Like not in a homophobic way, but I'm just like, what is going on here?
Are you gonna rape James Bond?
Yeah,
Rape James Bond.
yeah. Like, is this about to happen?
No.
But yeah, overall, just so many things considered in this movie. It just ended up being a great movie, and kind of a. I know it wasn't the last of the Daniel Craig outing, but in my opinion, it was the best. Yeah. By far. Yeah. So. We had a couple other like honorable mentions. John Wick 2. It was definitely a worthy successor to the first one.
Yeah, John Wick is one of those where the first one would have been perfect as a standalone. Yeah, like and it was almost built that way.
Right.
But it was so good as far as the action choreography, that you're just like, yeah, go ahead, expand that shit.
Yeah, like just make more, because we'll all go see it.
Yeah, I will keep seeing these.
Right.
Like, these are crazy. But like, I think, like you said, they did a really good job of stylizing it. And the second one, it really holds up.
Yeah.
Ruby Rose was a really cool antagonist in that. Common was a really great character added in. He was kind of somewhere in between.
Yeah, one of the risks that they take in movies like this, where the first one was so contained and there wasn't a whole lot of moving parts. It was just these guys who they didn't like what he had to say at the gas station, so they hunted him down and broke into his house and killed his dog.
Well, the first one, the hilarious thing about, well, I guess not hilarious, but like,
it's funny, they killed his dog.
Yeah, when you as an audience member see these villainous dudes kill the dude's puppy with a baseball bat.
Reek.
Yeah, you see Reek, and you're like, yes, John, kill them all. You have the moral high ground to kill so many people.
Right.
You're like, what? But it works. It works.
Yeah,
You're just like,
sure.
yeah, no mercy. Get them all.
Yeah. Like I was saying, it's the first one was so contained. There wasn't a whole lot of moving parts, and the risk that they took in the second one in making that whole John Wick world a little bit bigger, introducing you to the whole idea of this hotel in existence where they can go and check in as assassins, and they have like this unspoken, unwritten, or this recognized code that you don't come and get violent up in this hotel.
Right. Yeah.
You use it to kind of arrange business.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're all assassins and we might be here to kill each other, but nothing, no killing is going to go down in here.
Yeah.
And it is one of those, one of the more interesting things about these movies is this whole
underworld.
Yeah.
And like how it's structured.
Yeah.
And
kind of goes into that, that like action assassin movie motif, or another word I was looking for, trope, is the whole... what am I trying to think here? Say, the whole like a code among thieves.
Oh yeah.
Almost where we're all bad guys, or
right.
we're all killers.
Yeah.
But we all live by some sort of code.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps us different from like true evil people.
Right,
or,
you're
like,
right. It gives them a certain sense of likability.
Yeah.
Even though you know what they do.
Right.
It's like, how do you make an assassin super likable?
Yeah.
I'll kill people if you pay me.
Right.
But I'm still really likable.
Yeah.
It's like Rick and Morty. You're like, there we go, up to kill people.
Right. Yeah. John Wick Chapter 2, that was pretty good. Hopefully Chapter 3 will be just as good.
Yeah. In Chapter 3, we learn everyone in the entire world is an assassin. It is just an assassin world.
Yeah, just everyone.
They Truman showed him and made him think he was the only one.
Right. We also had down Toy Story 2, kind of. We didn't really hit on too much kid or family friendly or animated stuff here. Animated stuff didn't fall high on the list of movie genres that came up when we were doing our research.
Mm-hmm.
But we did want to make note of Toy Story 2. It kind of falls in between like a worthy successor or an honorable mention, and being part of the sequel was better, because I mean it's hard to beat the original. Like Toy Story 3 is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I'll never not cry during Toy Story 3 at the end. But Toy Story 2 definitely it took what Toy Story 1 had going for it and really upped the ante, and reinstilled these notions of the familial stuff.
Yeah.
Like how like the people that are close to you is what matters most in life.
Yeah.
With the whole introduction of what's her name, the Andy's counterpart, the girl, the cowgirl. I suck at names. But
I forget it too.
Yeah,
I'm right there with you.
That's what I'm talking about. But with her whole thing of still being bitter from being left behind.
Yeah.
And have you heard that fan theory about her being her owner was Andy's mom?
Yes.
You heard that?
Yeah.
That fan theory.
There's a lot of Toy Story fan
yeah,
theories.
for sure.
Like it connects with other
most of them
movies.
are super depressing.
Of course, like
but-
Toy Story.
Yeah. I mean, at its heart, it is kind of a sad franchise. I mean, with some positive and uplifting moments.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
There are plenty of sad moments. But yeah, I don't want to try and quote the whole fan theory. For fear of fucking it up, but
Yeah.
it goes along the lines of she was Andy's mom's doll when she was a kid, and apparently that helps explain the cowboy hats or cowgirl hats, however you want to put it, that she gives Andy in the first movie.
Yeah.
Because she just had it lying around. It wasn't like a gift that he got for his birthday, I believe. It was just a hat that she had, and that was one of the benchmarks in that fan theory. Was
It was actually like the girl version of the cowboy hat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was I kind of had that on the list. We had a couple others, but I think for the most part we've talked about. Some
For round 2 of the sequel was better.
yeah.
This is my radio voice.
Was the sequel of this podcast better?
There you go.
You tell us. No, really, tell me. I need validation.
Yes, say hi.
Yeah.
Like us, follow us.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for coming back and listening to the podcast after our hiatus. I greatly appreciate it. Sorry it's been so choppy, but like I said in part 1, the plan is to have more episodes on a more frequent basis, to have some cool guests come on, and if you, the listeners, have any ideas for episodes or topics that would make for good episodes, I'd love to hear them. I'd also love to have you on if you want to, if you'd like to come on and discuss something. I'm always looking for new guests to come on the show. And on that note, Jared, thank you so much for being on this episode, the previous episode, part 1, and episode 21, where we talked about Infinity War.
Oh, yeah.
Good time.
Happy to do it.
Yeah, for sure.
Good time.
Cool. Well, we are signing off now. We will hopefully talk to you soon.
Adios.
Bye-bye.